Dear respected ulama, members of Al-Bayt, respected elders, hajis, hajanas, brothers, sisters in Islam and Iman, youngsters, respected guests, Assalamu Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi wa Barakatuh. Wa Alaikum Assalam wa Rahmatullahi wa Barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I would like to begin my speech by thanking you all for giving me this opportunity to honor my tongue with the remembrance of Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, and perhaps have the opportunity, as weak and as helpless as I am for this task, to perhaps inspire some love for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam to grow and develop in the hearts of the people here, including my own heart. Forgive me, the brothers, they gave me a very long list of things they wanted me to discuss. So normally I don't speak with notes, because usually I don't speak for so long either. So tonight I'm speaking with notes so I don't forget anything. So do bear with me. I hope it's going to be okay, inshallah. So the first thing I've been asked to discuss with everyone here is what do we mean by the Mawlid or Eid Milad-un-Nabi? What does this mean? Why do we have such a term in Islam? Where does it come from? Well, linguistically, in other words, where does it come from in the Arabic language? It comes from a root from walada, which means to to procreate, to make children, yeah, to give birth. Okay, so the Mawlid, very simply, is about a birth. Every one of us here has had a Mawlid. If we didn't have a Mawlid, we wouldn't be sitting here. Okay? So very simply, that's what it is. And I'm going to discuss why we are gathering for the Mawlid of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. Why Eid Milad-un-Nabi? Milad, Mawlid, these are from the same root, same meaning. But why Eid Milad-un-Nabi? Because some people tell us there's only 2 Eids in Islam. There's only 2 Eids in Islam, and how can you say there is a 3rd Eid? So the very simple answer to this is, actually, my dear brothers and sisters who are saying this, is that you're about 50 Eids too short. You're about 50 Eids too short. Because every Friday is Eid. And in fact, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, in Sunan Ibn Majah, Sunan Ibn Majah is one of our most important books of hadith. Most important 6 books we have: Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sunan Ibn Majah, Jami Tirmidhi, or sometimes they say Sunan Tirmidhi, Sunan Abu Dawud, and Sunan al-Nasai. But in Sunan Ibn Majah, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam has told us, it has been reported to us, that he said that the Eid of Jummah is superior to Eid al-Adha, and it is superior to Eid al-Fitr. So there's not 2 Eids, per year, there are at least 52 Eids per year. So this statement is already wrong. The second point is that the word Eid means a day that comes again and again. A day that comes again and again. And it also has the connotation of meaning a festival. So any day that comes again and again that we remember will be an Eid. It doesn't have to be a day when we read Eid Salam. Yeah? On Jummah we don't read Eid Salam. Okay? Any day that comes again and again and we remember, we can call it Eid. And people shouldn't get hung up on terminology. They shouldn't get hung up on these names. They should rather be concerned with the essence of what we're talking about. What is it we are talking about? What is it we do when we come for the Milad? So, for many people, often at the heart of Milad function is the poetry. Poetry which is written in local languages, in different cultures. So you will have poetry in Urdu, in Bangla, in Tamil, in Arabic, in Farsi, in Somali, in Swahili. Local poetry written to describe the birth of Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. And people will stand and they will recite this poetry. So this is the Milad at its essence. But generally speaking, as well as this, in the Milad function, we will have, as you have seen, we will have recitation of the Qur'an. And Qur'an is the greatest it is the greatest praise of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. We will have recitation of Naat or Qasida, and we will have some speeches, and maybe we will have some food, and we will recite Salat and Salam upon Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. And we will remember the birth of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. We will talk about the attributes and qualities of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. We will talk about the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. And we will talk about his rights upon us and the manners that we owe towards him Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. So, if we look at these elements, can anyone say that any of these elements is haram? No. That any of these elements is something disliked? So if any of the elements are not haram or not disliked, how, if you put them all together, will they become something which is haram or disliked? Can it be? Are we sure? Okay. So, what is Milad? And how do we normally practice the Milad? So if on occasion you might hear or you might see on a YouTube video of some Milad function where something funny is going on which goes outside of the remits of Shariat, then obviously that issue is wrong. For example, maybe there are men and women dancing together, something like this, or there is some other funny thing going on. But in general, whenever I have gone to a Milad function, it has been something similar to this, usually more nuts, to be honest. Yeah. And if you see the videos on YouTube, the vast majority, it is the same thing. Wherever you go, whichever culture, whether you're in China, whether you're in Senegal, whether you're in Yemen, whether you're in Turkey, same thing. So just because of a few rotten apples, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because a few people are doing wrong things does not mean we get rid of everything. So, some people, they have an issue which they believe they are right in. And in a sense, they are right from one perspective. They are right from one side of things. They say that to love Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is to follow him. To love him is to follow him. And no doubt we are not going to argue, this is the fruit of love. This is the fruit of love. If you truly love, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grace you with the ability to follow Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. But it is not love itself. It is not love itself. The Prophet Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam has rights upon us. And the ulama said to love him, to honor him, to obey him. 3 separate things. They didn't say obey him. Just obey him and follow him. No. They said love him, honor him, obey him, follow him. Separate things. Why? Let us look at some of the examples that we find in the hadith. A man comes to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. He says, Ya Rasulullah, tell me when is the hour going to come? Yeah? This is the kind of thing we do especially as young people. We want to know about the Dajjal. We want to know about when the hour is coming. We want to know about the exciting things. But Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, he's telling us what is important here. Not when the hour is. He said, what have you prepared for the hour? What have you prepared for when you're going to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So he said, Oh Rasulullah, you know what, I haven't done much of praying. And I haven't done much of fasting beyond what is necessary. But I love Allah and His Messenger Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. Prophet Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam did not contradict him. He didn't say, oh, if you don't have lots of prayers and fasting, then you can't claim to love Allah and me. He didn't say that. He said, surely a man will be with whom he loves. He will be with whom he loves. On another occasion, there was one Sahabi and he had a bad habit of drinking alcohol. And he was caught by the other Sahabi Ikram many times. And they would punish him. On the 3rd or 4th occasion, one of the Sahaba said to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, Ya Rasulullah, curse him! He's always drinking, curse him! Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, he's so compassionate, he's so nice, he is mercy embodied. He said, don't help Shaytan against your brother. Don't judge people. Don't curse them. Try and help them. Don't help Shaytan against your brother. I swear by Allah, he loves Allah and His Rasul. Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. Just because someone has gунah, someone has sin, does not mean that they are not someone whose heart is full of love of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And we are all sinners. None of us are masoom. None of us are free from sin. Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu, he comes to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He says, Ya Rasulullah, I love you more than anything in the world. I love you more than my family. I love you more than my business. I love you more than everything except my own self. I love myself more. But Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam said, Ya Umar, you haven't quite got there yet. Your iman is not quite there yet. To have true, perfect iman, then you must love me more than your own self. So Umar was quiet for a moment. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Ya Rasulullah, now I love you more than I love my own self. And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam said, now you have it, Ya Umar. Now you have it. So Umar didn't do any extra action between these two times. He changed something inside his own heart. He corrected something inside his own heart. And then his iman became perfect. and we perhaps can only wish for such iman. We can only dream of such iman. And the opposite is also true. The opposite is also true. Somebody can have a long beard, or for the sisters, they can be wearing full burqa, niqab, everything. They can pray 5 times a day. They can fast. They can read as many Qur'an khatams in a month as you like. But they may be devoid of love of Allah and His Rasul Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. This seems strange to us, but it's a reality. And it was a reality in the time of Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam as well. In Bukhari Sharif, the Prophet Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam was dividing the spoils of war between various people. And a man came up. He was a very supposedly pious person. They say he had scars in his cheeks because he cried so much at night when he read the Qur'an. He had long beard. He had his trousers high up. And he said, "O Muhammad, this is a division which is not seeking the face of Allah." Na'udhu billah. He's saying the Prophet Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam is not being sincere with Allah. That he's giving people money for his own benefit, for his own likes and dislikes. The Sahaba Ikram wanted to cut this man's head off, because this is disrespect, this is qustaq. But Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam restrained them, because he said, this is the qadr of Allah. From this man will come a whole set of people who will be like this. They will pray and they will make your prayers seem like nothing. This is Sahaba Ikram, by the way, not us, Sahaba Ikram. They'll make the prayers of Sahaba Ikram seem like nothing. They will fast and they'll make your fasting seem like nothing. And they will recite Qur'an so beautifully, but it won't go past their throat. In other words, the qiraat will be here. It won't come down here and hit the heart. And he said they will go out of Islam like an arrow goes out of a bow. So love for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam should not be equated with how much somebody follows him or adheres, or how much they sin, etc., etc. We need to be very clear about this. So, again, some of our brothers and sisters, misguidedly, they ask us, is the Mawlid, is it not bid'ah? Is it not bid'ah? You know what bid'ah means? The Prophet Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, he said, in one of his speeches, he said, beware of new things. Beware of new things. For every new thing is an innovation. It is a bid'ah. And every bid'ah is dalala. It is misguidance. And every misguidance is in the nar, it is in the fire. Now this is a very important hadith, and we should be very mindful of it. But we also need to understand it correctly. We also need to understand it correctly. Is every new practice or every new way of doing things in Islam bid'ah? Is it bid'ah? Because when we ask the same brothers and sisters, why do you use or why do you make use of modern technology? Why do you make use of video cameras? Why do you make use of motor vehicles? Why do you make use of watches? Why do you make use of all of these things? What is their answer to us? They say, oh my brother, this is worldly matters. This is not a deeni matter. This is a worldly matter. It is not a deeni matter. And we say, okay, it's a worldly matter, but it's not a deeni matter. Where is this distinction in the hadith that you just quoted to me? Didn't the Prophet ﷺ say every new thing? He didn't say every new thing, but not the worldly matters. He said every new thing. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but my understanding coming into Islam is that we do not make distinction in this deen between matters which are worldly and religious. We don't just come in the mosque is for deen, and we go outside and this is a different reality. Oh, this is the world, you can do what you like in the world. Yeah? We have got rules about living in the world. We have rules about marriage. We have rules about divorce. We have rules about business. We have rules about taking interest. Are these not worldly matters? And where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line between worldly matters and dini matters? Because let's have a look at some of the ways that we are doing ibadah now. The ways that people who are criticizing the Mawlid, how they are doing ibadah. They have a phone, a computer phone, a smartphone, and they download a Qur'an app on it. And they open up the Qur'an on the computer. And they press a button and they hear the Qari reciting. And they can pause, they can rewind, they can fast forward. Is this ibadah? Is this deen or is this dunya? Is it deen or is it dunya? This mosque, mashallah, is not made out of date palms. It's not made out of date palms. That's how Masjid al-Nabi was originally built, out of date palms. It is made out of modern materials, concrete, steel. A few hundred years ago, we didn't even know how to construct a mosque like this. Is this a matter of deen or is it a matter of dunya? What about jihad? Are we asking mujahideen to take swords and bows and arrows now? They have to put the AK-47 aside? Is jihad, is it deen or is it dunya? So these kind of distinctions, there's no evidence from the hadith in the first place for what they are saying. And secondly, these distinctions are very, very questionable. They're very questionable. So then they say to you, no, brother, you've misunderstood. Okay, we'll give you explain it in a different way. The Salaf, they say, the Salaf were allowed to do innovation. The Salaf were allowed to bring bid'ah, but we are not allowed to bring bid'ah. They are allowed to bring new things, but we are not allowed to bring new things. And again, this is a very funny statement. Who was the person that Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, who did he tell this warning to first and foremost to? Sahaba Ikram. So are they saying that on the one hand, he is telling them not to do bid'ah, on the other hand, he's allowing them to do bid'ah? Does this make any sense? And actually, if we look in the time of the Salaf, we see real bid'ah going on. We see real bid'ah. What is real bid'ah? Let's clarify this. Real bid'ah is in aqaid. First and foremost, it is in aqaid. And the deviant sects in Islam, in the time of the Salaf, when they first emerged, were defined by their aqidah. How much they diverged from the aqidah of AhleSunnaTV wal Jama'ah. So let's give a couple of examples. Firstly, there were the Khawarij. Khawarij, they said, if somebody commits a sin, a major sin, then they have left Islam. They do a major sin, they've left Islam. And with this very strange understanding, they did takfir on Imam Ali karamallahu wajhul. Yeah? They said that Imam Ali was a kafir, na'udhu billah. So this is bid'ah in aqidah, because when somebody does a sin, they are a sinner. They are not a kafir. This is bid'ah, changing the beliefs of Islam. Another example of this was the Ghulat Shia. The very early Shia sects, some of them, they said Ali is Allah. Ali is Allah. So they were the other extreme. The other extreme to the Khawarij. Said Ali is Allah. Na'udhu billah. This is real bid'ah. But these people, when they had these beliefs, by the way, most of these things don't exist anymore. Yeah, these sects that I'm talking about right now. I'm not talking about the modern day sects. I'm talking about sects that have died out. These people were alive in the time of the Salaf. So were these bid'ah allowed? No, of course they're not allowed. Okay? So then how do we make a distinction? How do we make a distinction? What distinction do we make between those new practices which are allowed and those new practices which are not allowed? It's very, very simple. It is in the balance of the Shariat. It is what accords with the Sharia. Something which is haram, something which is forbidden, it can never become part of Islamic practice. But if it is something which has not been forbidden, and the basis of Islamic law is what? Not that everything is forbidden until there's a hadith proving that it's allowed. It's the other way around. That everything is permitted until it is forbidden. Not only that, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam has given the distinction for us. He has given the distinction for us. In Sahih Muslim, there is a story about Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. He is calling people to give chanda, to give charity. He's calling people to give charity. And people were giving little bits of charity. And so one man had the bright idea. He is a very wealthy man. He said, if I bring lots and lots and lots of money, and I make a big show of myself giving money, then maybe that will encourage other people to also give money. So he came and his shirt was full of money like this, and he was sort of staggering from side to side. And he put the money down. And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam approved of this. Because once he had done this, many other people started donating, giving money, increasing the revenue. And then he said, whoever introduces a good sunnah, because sunnah originally, it's not limited to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but it means just a way of doing things. He says, whoever introduces a good sunnah, they will get the reward of it, and whoever follows them in doing that sunnah. So if you start a good sunnah, and other people follow you in it, you will get your reward, but you'll also get the reward of everyone who follows you in doing that. MashaAllah. And he said, whoever introduces a bad sunnah, because some people say, oh, he just means reviving a sunnah here. Just reviving one of my sunnah. No. Because then he says, whoever introduces a bad sunnah, they will get the sin of it and the sin of whoever follows them in it. So he, Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, is making it very clear. If you do something which is in accordance with Shariat, is not being made haram, but it's a new way of encouraging people in deen, of helping people to do their deeni actions, then this is a good thing. And if we look at the ways Sahaba introduced new practices after the Prophet Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam had passed away, you can see that this is the principle behind it. The Qur'an, the Mus'haf. You know Mus'haf, when we take the copy of the Qur'an, we call it Qur'an. And then we say many Qur'ans. This is wrong. There's only one Qur'an. The copy of the Qur'an is called Mus'haf. There was no Mus'haf in the lifetime of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. There's nobody had one copy of the Qur'an in his lifetime. It was written on different pieces of leather and bones and saddles, because there's no paper at that time. But in the time when Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq Akbar radiallahu anhu, when he was the Caliph, he had the whole Qur'an compiled into one Mus'haf. And even he was saying to himself, but Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't do this. Should I do it? But Sayyidina Umar said, yes, it is something good. It is something good. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, in his caliphate, he saw that during the nights of Ramadan, that the people were gathering behind different Qur'an in Masjid al-Nabawi. Because during the lifetime of Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, the number of Sahaba was smallish. It wasn't a huge number. It was towards the end, but still it wasn't so many. And people were very sincere, they wanted to learn the Qur'an, and everyone would read the Taraweeh at home. Only on 2 or 3 occasions did Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam lead them in Jamaat for Taraweeh. But Sayyidina Umar, because he saw that the people had become weaker, he organized it into one Jamaat behind one Qari. In fact, one Qari for the men and one Qari for the women. And he made this a regular practice. He personally didn't always take part himself. Because there is a report in Sahih al-Bukhari of him standing at the back of the masjid, observing this and saying to his friends, this is a blessed bid'ah. This is a blessed bid'ah. In Sahih al-Bukhari. So again, he's introducing something new to facilitate for the people. Sayyidina Uthman, radiallahu anhu. This is also mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari. During the time of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, Sahaba Ikram would stay in the masjid from Fajr until Jummah. From Fajr until Jummah Salah. Reading Qur'an, doing dhikr, reading Salah. And so there's only need for one azan. The azan just before the khutbah. Just before the khutbah. But it's not haram for you to go out to the mosque between Fajr and Jummah. And it's not even haram for you to go out and do business and do your job. This was just the way of Sahaba. They had so much love for ibadah, and for the day of Jummah they stayed in the masjid the entire time between Fajr and Jummah. So by the time of Sayyidina Uthman, most of the people, they were not at that same maqam. They were not at that same station as those Sahaba Ikram were. So they were busy in the market doing business. So, and they were coming late for Jummah. So he said, we need to add an extra azan to facilitate for them. And that's where we get the second azan. Is the first one in time, but it's the second one in institution. We have the second azan now. Sayyidina Ali, Karamallahu Wajhul Kareem, he observes that the non-Arabs, they're having problems with the Arabic language. They don't understand the Arabic language. They find it difficult to learn. So he writes the first book of Arabic grammar. And don't tell me that learning the Arabic grammar is not important for understanding Qur'an. It's very important for understanding Qur'an. And therefore it is important for your deen. Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah, he adds the harakats. You know, before the Qur'an, the original Arabic script, it has no fatha, Qasra and Dhamma, or some of you say Zabr Zay Pesh. There's one in the original Qur'an, because the Arabs knew. They knew how to read Arabic without these things. And you know what else wasn't there in the original script? The dots. 2 dots on the ta, 1 dot on the ba. They weren't there. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, who was a zalim, who was an oppressor, he is the one who introduced the dots. He introduced the dots. And then, over time, what? Now we have it written on paper, we have it bound, we have it pressed, we have it printed. Why? To facilitate for us, to make our deen easy for us. So the same thing. The ulama ikram, and in particular Shaykh Abdul-Qadir Jilani, he made this practice, the way that we do Eid Milad al-Nabi today, he made this a practice to revive the love of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wa Sallam, to remind people of the characteristics of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wa Sallam, to remind people of his rights upon us, to remind people about the manners that we have to have towards him, to remind people of his status. Yeah? And you know, if you look at the Islamic history, because this is what Ghiyari Sharif was originally. You know, Ghiyari Sharif is a separate function now. But originally, Giyari Sharif, you started things on the 11th, and it went into the 12th. And it was not just to educate the Muslims, but also to do da'wah to the non-Muslims as well. But if you look in Islamic history, you see that Imam al-Ghazali, he writes Ulum ad-Din, to bring the spirituality back into the deen, into understanding of our deen. Then Shaykh Abdul-Qadir Jilani came, and then he made this a movement, bringing the spirituality back, not just in books, but amongst the people. Third generation who is brought up in this society, the society of Eid Milad al-Nabi, Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, who liberates Palestine. Because he was born in a society of people who grew up with love of Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, and he could call upon them to cast out the invaders. So as I said before, what aspect of Eid Milad al-Nabi is objectionable to our dear brothers and sisters who are making these objections? Somebody told me, one of the organizers here said that people are objecting to the word celebrate. That we should not celebrate Eid Milad al-Nabi, we should only commemorate. So my answer to that is that you don't understand the English language. You don't understand the English language. In fact, I would say it is haram to say commemorate, and I would say it is fine for us to say celebrate, and I will explain that a little bit later. But what does celebrate mean? Why is it that some of our Muslim brothers and sisters, I don't know, this strikes me as something very, very disturbing, that we should be scared of celebrating, of being happy, of being joyous about our beloved Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. And that the word celebrate for us only means people dancing and people drinking alcohol. That is very, very worrying for me as somebody who studies psychology. That is something worrying, that people feel that is something wrong, to be happy and joyous in this deen. This is a deen of being happy and joyous. Yes, there is a time we must also fear Allah. We must get up in the last of the night and cry before Allah and do tawbah, no doubt. No one's denying that. But Iman is not just fear. Iman is also hope, and hope leads to love. We must say, the Prophet Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, he went through far worse things than we will ever imagine. But Sayyidah Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, she says, I never saw anyone who was more smiling than Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He was always happy, always smiling, always compassionate. Look at Sayyidina Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he gives a decision in favor of Sayyidina Ja'far over some other people in a legal matter. Sayyidina Ja'far, he was so excited. He'd been spending a lot of time in Ethiopia. This is where the first emigration of the Muslims was, to Ethiopia. And he just returned back. So he'd caught some of the culture and the customs of the Ethiopians. And he was so happy, he danced around Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Rasulullah said, Ya Ja'far, what is this? And he said, this is something I saw in the court of the Najashi, of the Ethiopian king. That when somebody, he would give a decision in favor of them, they would dance around him out of happiness. Did Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam object? Did he say, you can't do this? Is this wrong? No, he didn't. Sahabi Akram is mentioned in Sunan Abu Dawood that they would kiss the hands and feet of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam out of joy, out of happiness. We have gatherings, this whole thing about gathering to be happy about Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Sahaba did this. Sahaba did gather to be happy about Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Once a group of Sahaba were gathered in Masjid al-Nabawi. They gathered in Masjid al-Nabawi, and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam came out from one of his rooms, and he said, what are you doing? Why are you gathered here? They said, Ya Rasulullah, we are gathered here to remember Allah and to thank Him for blessing us with the Qur'an and blessing us through you. Blessing us through you, Ya Rasulullah. And he said, swear by Allah. Say Wallahi. Yeah? We say Wallahi for any silly reason. But when the Prophet Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam asked you to swear by Allah, then it's a serious matter. So they said, yes, we swear by Allah. And he said, I wasn't asking you to swear by Allah for any, because I doubted you, because I thought maybe you were making this up. But I've asked you to swear by Allah because Jibreel alayhi salam has descended to me just now, and he said that Allah is boasting in front of the Malaika about your gathering. And this narration is found in Sunan and Nasai, and it is Sahih even according to the ulama who are opposing the Mawlid gathering. They are the ones who are giving the grading of Sahih. So what is the issue here? We don't know. So one of my students, I wasn't going to discuss this, but one of my students, she asked me, what about the julus? Is the julus allowed? Is it allowed to do a procession and wave flags? So the first thing we have to ask is it forbidden to do a procession? Is it forbidden for people to march? Is it forbidden to people to wave green flags? Do you find this prohibition anywhere? No. We don't find this prohibition anywhere. Why do people do julus? To show the love of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam to the non-Muslims. To say, look, we love him. We love Rasulullah. And we want you to love him as well. We want you to come into this family of love. This relationship of love. It is a means of da'wah. And the same people who are accusing us of doing bid'ah, they are doing many different forms of da'wah. And they're making up new ways of doing da'wah. They are doing YouTube videos, they are doing on Facebook, they are doing in TV channels. They're doing their own different forms of da'wah. Yeah? They're going out on the streets and they're asking people questions. Do you know this about Islam? Do you know that about Islam? Did Sahabi Akram do any of these things? Did Tabi'in do any of these things? Tabi'in do any of these things? No. Did they have Global Peace and Unity Conference? Did they have Tablighi Ijtima? Did they have Salafi Dawah Conference? Did they have Peace Conference? Did they have any of these things? No. But you don't accuse one another of doing bid'ah, but only when it comes to the Mawlid, or to Urs, or for Shuhada Karbala. Then you say, is bid'ah. When it's about politics, Global Peace and Unity Conference, or when it's about calling people to a particular manhaj, whether it's Tablighis or Salafis or whatever it is, we're happy to have conference and this and that and the other. But when we want to call people towards Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, to Ahlul Bayt, to Sahabi Ikram, to Awliya Allah, then it's a problem. Let us be just. Let us be people of justice when we are talking about these things. Okay? Because it's not a joke when people are saying it's wrong to gather for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And people are mocking as well. They are mocking and making fun of this. People should really, check themselves. I don't want to get upset because then I'll go into a rant and it will all be gone. But we have processions in Islam. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because we don't do this anymore, we've forgotten about this. But in the early days of Islam, when it's Eid day, after Fajr Namaz, all of the Muslims would gather up and they would do a julus. They would do a procession outside of Medina al-Munawwara to the Eidgah. So, and when they came back from the Eidgah, they would go another route. They would go another route. Why? To show the non-Muslims the strength of Islam. To show the brotherhood of Islam, the love of Islam. We do procession, we do julus when we take people to the graves. And we will do julus on the Day of Judgment. This will be the greatest julus in honor of Anbiya alayhi salam. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be there. We will be in His presence. all of the veils will be ripped. There will be no excuse for any human being then not to acknowledge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But will they go and speak to Allah directly? No. First they will go to Adam alayhi salam. And he will say, don't come to me. Nafsi, nafsi, I'm worried about my own self. Go to Nuh alayhi salam. Nuh alayhi salam will say, no, no, nafsi, nafsi, I'm worried about myself. Go to Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ibrahim alayhi salam, don't come to me, go to Musa alayhi salam. My nafs, I'm worried about myself today. Musa alayhi salam will say the same thing. He will send him to Isa alayhi salam. Isa alayhi salam will say, I'm also worried about myself. Go to Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. And out of all of the Anbiya alayhi salam, he will not say nafsi nafsi, he will say ummati ummati. And I saw this actually on Facebook. I confess I'm on Facebook. Somebody said, we should not be celebrating Eid Milad al-Nabi. We should not be spending money on Eid Milad al-Nabi. We should not be wasting time with Eid Milad al-Nabi while people are suffering in Syria. I said, what kind of Islam is this? Did you not hear what Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam said? لا يؤمنون حتكم حتى أكون عليه من والدي وولده وناس أجمعين. None of you have true iman into you love me more than your parents and your children and the entire humanity. And now you're telling us that we need to put the people of Syria first before our love for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. And let us say something about this. Most of us here, we probably cannot imagine what those people are going through, or the people of Palestine are going through, or the people of Somalia, or the people of Chechnya, or any of these places where people are suffering in the world. But let me tell you something now. Most of these people, whatever reality they're in, whether they're in refugee camps, whatever situation they're in, they are celebrating Eid Milad al-Nabi. You can find videos, not just of the refugees, but of the Mujahideen themselves are celebrating Eid Milad al-Nabi. They are singing nasheed for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. But whatever they are going through, as Muslims, when we look for consolation for our hearts, when we are going through hard times, we can always look towards Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. Because every suffering that we have, he had. If you have lost a child when they are small, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam lost a child, those children when they were small. If you've lost children when they have grown to adulthood, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he lost children when they had grown to adulthood. If you have been persecuted, if you have been driven out of your home, then Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam was persecuted and driven out of his home. If you have lost people who have been murdered and tortured through oppression, then Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, he also lost people like this. If you have suffered from illnesses, he also suffered. If people did black magic on you, he also had people doing black magic on you. Even if someone poisoned you, someone poisoned Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. Any suffering that you can go through, any suffering that we can go through, he Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam went through it. So we find our consolation, our comfort in remembering him and remembering how he dealt with these situations. But if we cut Sayyidina Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam out of our iman, that's when we stop coping. That's when every day we have to be miserable. Every day we have to be sad. Every minute, because every minute there are Muslims suffering. Is this really the Islam that we want to have? Is this really the Islam that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam brought? That we have to be miserable all the time? No. There is a balance. And as I said, he went through wars. He went through wars. He went through terrible things. And yet, he still smiled. He was the most smiling of people. Okay? I'm sorry this is dragging on a little bit. But they've given me a very long list. So, maybe this gets to the crux of the matter. Maybe this gets to the crux of the matter, the heart of the matter. Forgive me if I'm using difficult words. Okay? But they say, they object because you are celebrating his birth. and therefore you are imitating the Christians. Christians do Christmas, you are doing Eid Milad al-Nabi. What is the difference between you? So as somebody, as you've already heard, who grew up for 20 years in the Catholic Church and celebrated Christmas all of those years, I find this very strange objection. A very strange objection. Because I can tell you now that Christmas is not the celebration of the birth of a Nabi. Christmas is not the celebration of the birth of a Nabi. We love Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam more than anyone. But they don't celebrate that. They celebrate the birth of a Ilah, of a Quda, of a God. They say he is God the Son, become a man. And he was born to Sayyidah Maryam alayhi salam. And of course, this is beyond all bounds of acceptability for us. This is an insult to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we're not going to stop them from doing that. We're not going to interrupt their celebration. This would be counterproductive in fact. But we are not going to celebrate that. We are not going to engage in that. But we are not talking about doing that. We are talking about celebrating the birth of Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. And some people think, because they have a very poor Islamic education, and I've actually heard people say this from the television programs. They say, what is so important about the birth of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? What is so important about it? He wasn't even a prophet at that time. Na'uzubillah. Because they have this aqidah that al-Nabi Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam was a normal person, and then suddenly at the age of 40, he became a Nabi. He became a Nabi. No. This is not the aqidah that he himself taught us. No, he himself taught us. Even in the Qur'an, when Isa is born, what does he say? He is instructed to speak as a newborn. He is instructed to speak as a newborn by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to clear his mother of any impropriety, that she had been doing zina or something like this, yeah? To make it clear that this is not the situation. What does he say? وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيَّ يَوْمَ وَلِدْتُ وَيَوْمَ أَمُوتُ وَيَوْمَ أُبْعَثُ حَيًّا. Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. Peace be upon me the day I was born, the day I shall die, and the day I will be raised to life again. Now, let us go to the most conservative tafsir. The most conservative tafsir. The one that is favored by the opponents of the Mawlid. What did they say about this? Sayyidina Imam Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah. He says this ayat has two meanings. One meaning, it is to make clear that Sayyidina Isa is a human being. Because every human being goes through birth, death, and will be resurrected. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not born, He doesn't die, and He will not be raised again. He is beyond such things. So it's clear that He is not Allah or an Ilah. Second thing he says is that these 3 days are the most traumatic days of a normal human being's life. The day you're born, you're screaming and crying and kicking, and you just come out of this nice space inside the womb, you come out, no, what's this place? The day you die, you're separated from your loved ones, you're separated from your wealth, your properties, a very traumatic day. And then the day you are brought before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that day will be a very scary day. But for Anbiya alayhi salam, these 3 days are days of complete peace, complete security. So on the one hand, we are being told, he is like us as being a human being, but on the other hand, he is a completely different category of human being than us. And that his birth is important, his death is important, and his resurrection is important. And also in the same dialogue, he tells us that I have been made a Nabi, and I have been given the scripture. I have been given the book. What is the book? Torah and Injil in his case. How old is he? Just a few months old. Now some people object, of course, because they have to object. And they say, no, this is just for Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. So we say, okay, you're wrong, but let's just go along with you for a little bit. When Sahabi Ikram asked Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, when did you become a prophet? So it's his opinion that counts more than anyone else's after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's. He says, بين عدم بين الروح والجسد. This is in Jami Tirmidhi, and again is Sahih. Even again one of the great heroes of those people who are opposing the Mawlid, Shaykh Ismaeel Ibn Taymiyyah, he himself is saying this hadith is Sahih. This hadith Sahih. He became that the Prophet ﷺ became a Nabi when Adam was between spirit and body. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an, جَاءَكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ نُورٌ وَكِتَابٌ مُبِينٌ. There has come to you from Allah a nur, a light, and a manifest book. And majority of Mufassirin, starting with Imam Tabari, they say this nur is Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. And even one of the greatest figures of the Salafi Aqidah, Shaykh Uthaymeen, in his book of Aqidah, he says, yes, the Prophet ﷺ is nur. How he is nur, we don't know. Even they have to admit, because it's in the books of tafsir. We don't know. They say, as long as you don't say he's not human, then it's okay. You can say he's nur. Okay? But the Prophet ﷺ has told us in Sahih al-Bukhari, I was born again and again through the generations. I was passed through the generations until I was born in this, the best of generations. So what does this mean? I believe that he was in that state, a state of nur, which was being transferred from father to son until he was born. Again in Sahih Muslim, some Sahabi Ikram said, what was the first affairs of prophethood that you witnessed? So when you were alive, what was the first time things that you witnessed of prophethood? He didn't say when I was 40 on the mountain and Jibreel al-Islam came to me. No, he didn't say that. He said, when I was a small boy amongst the Banu Bakr. Amongst Banu Bakr, meaning his foster parents. Sayyidah Halima radiallahu anha was his foster mother. They lived out in the desert to make him strong, to make him have good Arabic language, etc. He said, I was with my foster brother, and two, he says in this, birds, but it means angels. They came down and they took me, they laid me down and they cut open my chest. And they took out my heart and they washed my heart. And they took something black out of it and they said, this is Shaytan's part of him. Now, let's clarify that quickly before people get misunderstand. Shaytan's part? One of the great ulama of the Arabs of the last century, Hazrati Sayyid Muhammad ibn Ali al-Makki, he clarified what this means. He said the heart of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam is rahmatul lil alameen. It is a mercy for all the worlds. It is mercy for all the worlds. And this was Shaytan's connection to that mercy. So to remove that connection to the mercy, they had to remove it. They had to remove it. So that Shaytan would have no connection to the mercy of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. Because in other people, this is where Shaytan whispers to you. He can't whisper to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So for him, he was trying to use it the other way, to get the mercy out. The angel said, no, we'll take this one out. Then they weighed him. They weighed him in a scale. And they weighed him against 10 men. And they weighed him against 100 men. This is in Sahih Muslim. We're not making these things up. And he was always outweighing. However many they put against him, he's outweighing. And they said, one of the angels said to the other, by Allah, if we were to weigh him against his entire ummah, he would still outweigh them. He would still outweigh them. So when did the Prophet ﷺ become a prophet? At the age of 40? No. And again, we have been fed the wrong story about the Prophet ﷺ when he received the first revelation. We are given the account in Sahih-ul-Qadri. And I want again to return to Imam Ibn Kathir in his Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, in his book of history, how he explains this hadith. Because they add masala to this hadith. They bring weak narrations and fabricated narrations and they add them to the hadith. Narrations that Rasulullah ﷺ was scared. He was worried that he didn't know, is it a jinn or is it an angel? And he didn't want to be possessed by a jinn. You heard these stories. So many of these preachers give these stories. And then he was scared. Oh no, I'm going to be got by a jinn. Na'uzubillah. These are weak and fabricated narrations. And they're not in the narration in Bukhari Sharif. They're not in the narration in Bukhari Sharif. Qadi Ayad, one of the great muhaddithin of Andalusia, of the Islamic Spain, he said it will undermine the entire foundations of Islam if you believe this. If the Nabi cannot tell the difference between an angel and a jinn, you've undermined the entire foundations of Islam. Because you're suggesting that it's possible he was deceived, na'udhu billah. No. You see, this narration in Sahih al-Bukhari, Ibn Kathir makes it very clear. He said this is a dream preceding the first revelation. It is a dream preceding the first revelation. And it is a symbolic dream. So, the Prophet ﷺ in the dream, what happens to him? Jibreel al-Islam asks him to read. And every time he asks him to read, he squeezes him. He squeezes him. And the squeezing is to show what? That this is going to be a great burden. This is going to be a very difficult mission. But you will be able to take it. And it's done 3 times. Why? Because 3 times is sunnah. And the Prophet ﷺ also said about Qur'an, you have to read a verse of Qur'an at least 3 times before you can even begin to understand it. And then what happens? So Ibn Kathir gives another narration. Because when the Prophet ﷺ has this dream in Mount Hira, he wakes up, he goes to Hazrat Khadija radiallahu anha, and she comforts him. She says, no, she says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give you care. Because yes, the Prophet ﷺ was in awe, fear, but not fear of Shaytan, not fear of jinn, but he was worried, perhaps maybe I cannot take on this mission. This is natural. But his wife is consoling him. The next day, let's go again to Imam Ibn Kathir, he mentions another narration. This narration is also Sahih. This is from the Maghazi of Musa ibn Uqba, who was one of the very early narrators of Hadith, and his narrations can be found in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. He said the Prophet ﷺ, after being consoled by Bibi Khadija radiallahu anha, he goes back to the mountains. This is during the day. And Sayyidina Jibreel al-Islam descends. And he gives a beautiful seat for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He puts out a beautiful rug. It's made of velvet and it has beautiful stones in it. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, please sit down. And then he says, Ya Rasulullah, Iqra, please read. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, with what shall I read? Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read with the name of your Lord. Read with the name of your Lord. And then the narration goes on. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, he was very happy, he is very elated that he had been given the mission. And he walked down the mountain and he said, every tree and every rock was greeting me, As-salatu wa-salamu alayka ya Rasulullah. And then he met with Hazrat Khadija and he told her the whole story. And then she went off and she consulted various Christians that she knew, or this, that. But he told her, Jibreel al-Islam came to me. He told me this mission is from my Lord. There's no doubt on the part of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidah Khadija, she verified for herself. She checked with the people of the book. She made other tests. But for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this was not a time of fear and a time of being frightened of jinn and all this nonsense things. No, no, no. This is a time of great elation, great happiness. Okay? message. Right, where have we got to? And the Prophet ﷺ gave importance to his birth. He'd say, I fast on a Monday because I was born on a Monday. And because revelation came to me on a Monday. This is his own decision. Sahaba Ikram gave importance to the birth. You know our Hijri calendar. Our Hijri calendar, this was devised by committee by Sayyidina Umar. When he was the Caliph, he said, look, and again this is another example of bid'ah, good bid'ah. He gathered Sahaba Ikram, he said, which year shall we begin our calendar from? The very first suggestion of Sahaba Ikram was the year the Prophet Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam was born. But they couldn't agree how many years ago that had been. So this was not workable. Then they said the year that he received the first revelation. Again, they couldn't agree about this. Then they said the year that he died. But they said, no, this would be too sad to be on the basis of the year that he died. So we will go to the year that he did Hijrah. But if they could have remembered which year he had been born in, they could agree upon it, then we would have a Mawlid calendar and not a Hijri calendar. Okay? How much time have I got left? I don't want to...
As long as you want, inshallah.
I'm more worried about the brothers, they're going to get tired. Okay?
Number 2 hours now, inshallah.
So the last objection that I'm going to deal with is that we are respecting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in ways which are un-Islamic, which go against the etiquettes of Islam. Okay? You know, many of us, we don't even understand or appreciate the etiquettes of Islam towards Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the opponents of the Mawlid are some of the worst offenders in this respect. Because you hear them on their pulpits and on their mimbars. They're saying Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said this, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did that. Run if you hear someone saying this. Run. Run for the hills. Because you will not find in any hadith book Sahaba Ikram saying Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said this or Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did that. Na'uzubillah. They say قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They would always use his blessed titles. They would never use his name alone without his titles. Even his blessed wives, they would address Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam saying, Ya Rasulullah. Okay, there's no one more intimate than your wife, but they say, Ya Rasulullah. They knew the etiquette to speak to him. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Qur'an, to other Anbiya, says, Ya Yahya, Ya Isa, Ya Nuh, Ya Musa, but never Ya Muhammad. Never Ya Muhammad. Ya Muzammar, Ya Mudaththir. These great names, these great honorable names of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. As I said before, they would kiss his hands, they would kiss his feet. They would say, Ya Rasulullah, may my mother and father be sacrificed for you. May my mother and father be qurbani for you. Can you imagine? When he was having his hair cut, this is mentioned in Tahir-ul-Qadri, they would do tawaf around him, catching those hairs. So not one single hair would touch the floor. And they would keep those hairs, and they would make sure those hairs went with them in their grave. For barakah. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubair. Actually, before we say Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubair, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar. Every place between Makkah and Medina where he could remember that Rasulullah had prayed, he would make a point of going to those places on his journeys and praying in those places. And this is mentioned in detail in Sahih al-Bukhari, giving all the names of the different locations between Makkah and Medina. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubair, the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, had cupping done, hijama. He had blood removed from his back for health reasons. This is very good sunnah to do. And he gave the cup full of blood to Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubair radiallahu anhu. He said, dispose of this for me. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr said, where on earth can I dispose of this? He went off for a long time looking around. And finally when he came back to Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, he was asked, where did you dispose of it? He said, I couldn't think of any respectful place to put it. So I drank it. Now blood is haram for us to consume. Blood is haram for us to consume. It's haram for us to consume. And let me tell you from personal experience, I have a witness here as well. I lost a wisdom tooth. It was actually taken out by the dentist, but something went wrong. And by the time I got home, I had swallowed a belly full of my own blood. And I had to go to hospital. Trust me, the human body is not designed to consume blood. It all had to come back out again. But the blood of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam was blessing for the stomach of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Did Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, did he object? No. He said, whoever's blood has mixed with my blood, they will be safe from Jahannam. They will be safe from Jahannam. This is something incredible. Even his blood is not like our blood. So everything connected with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is blessed. You know, ask some of these people who are objecting to Mawlid, why are Sahabi Ikram so important? Why are they better than us? Why are their feet over our head? They will tell you, because they did most work for Islam. They're the ones who established Islam. That's why they're better than us. And in general, this is true. But it's not universally true. There were some Sahaba who became Sahabis on their deathbeds. They became Sahabis on their deathbeds. They never did any work for Islam as such. Some became Muslim after, and then within 1 hour, 2 hours they were dead. Some Sahaba, they only met Rasulullah once, and then they went back to farming or whatever it might be. But still, their feet are above the feet of every waliullah who has come since. Why? Why? Because they were blessed with the glance, with the gaze of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We all know about nazar, about the bad gaze. But this is the beautiful and blessed gaze of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that elevated them, whatever they may or may not have done, from being whoever they were to being the best people in all creation after the Anbiya alayhi salam. Just from his gaze. So everything connected with Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala wasallam is blessed and it is respected. And we should search out any trace of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and try and be close to that. I know one brother recently, he wasn't able to view the hair of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He always goes to view it every year, and he wasn't able to go this year. And that man wept, and he wept, and he wept because he could not be near the hair of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's how we need to be. We need to be making effort to see these things, and there are many things that are going around. And people will ask us, but what if they are not authentic? What if they are not authentic? I say to them, look, this is the way we need to deal with things. I tell them a story about a waliullah in India. A man came to a village in India and he wanted to be treated nicely. He wanted to be honored by the people of that village. So he said, okay, when I go into this village, I'm going to tell them I'm a Sayyid. I am from the descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because these people will respect me, they'll treat me nicely. So he went into the village, and the waliullah who was there, he met him, he showed him a lot of respect. He said, you sleep in my bed, I will feed you, I will make a feast for you, I will bring all the people, they will show you respect, and you stay here as long as you want. So he stayed 2 or 3 days. And then, as he was leaving, the waliullah went with him. He walked him out of the village. He said, I need to show you respect, I'll walk you out of the village. And then he stopped at a particular place. And so this man who was claiming to be a Sayyid, he said, why have you stopped here? He said, I stopped here because this is where you became a Sayyid. And this is where you stopped being a Sayyid. So even if something is a fake, our niyat can still be authentic. Our niyat can still be authentic. Our intention can still be good, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward our intention even if it is fake. But it's whether we are going to make excuses for not honouring and venerating the Sadat, the descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if we're not going to make effort to see the hairs and the other relics of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and take blessing from them. Yeah? So these are not un-Islamic forms of veneration, our respect. And they tell us, I'm going to wrap up now, I'm sure some of you will be relieved. Yeah? They tell us we can't stand for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We can't stand for him. Because they say, Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam said, don't stand up for me, but they don't complete the hadith. They don't complete the hadith. He said, don't stand up for me like the way the Persians stand up for one another. Like the Ajami people stand up for one another. But in other hadith he said, about Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, who was the chief of one of the tribes of the Ansar, he said to his tribesmen, stand up for your betters and elders. Stand up for your betters and elders. And in another hadith, in Mishkat Sharif, the Prophet ﷺ stands up on the majlis, all the Sahaba Ikram stand up, and they continue standing and watching him while he walks into one of the hujra. So how do we reconcile these two hadiths? These hadiths are not contradictory, by the way. The Prophet ﷺ does not give us contradictory instructions. The way that the Persians would honor people is that the leader of the Persians, or any nobleman of the Persians, he would be seated, and everyone else would be standing up. So this is what Rasulullah ﷺ forbade, that one man be sitting down and everyone be standing up for him, waiting on him. But he didn't forbid that people stand up when a respectable person comes into the room. Yes, not only can you stand up, you should stand up. And we must stand up for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, because there is no one greater than him. There is no one more sharif than him. Then they tell us, okay, but you are not allowed to say Salat and Salam while you are standing up. They say when you're in Salah, Allah has decreed that you say Salat and Salam when you are sitting. When you are sitting. So we said to them, it's very simple, brother. Have you never prayed Salatul Janazah? Have you never prayed Salatul Janazah? Because you have to read Salat and Salah in Salatul Janazah, and you are not allowed to read Salatul Janazah sitting down. Okay? Unless you are very ill. Okay? So there's no rocket science. Okay? And why do we say Salat? We are taught to say in our prayers, Assalamu Alayka Ayyuhan Nabi. Just after we've said in our prayers, by the way, all the prayers are for you, Allah. All the prayers are for you. But still, within this prayer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed that in this prayer to Allah, we must establish and develop a relationship with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We must establish, we must greet him, we must respect him. And what happens when that happens? Because we believe in a living prophet. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Al-Anbiya ahya'un fi kuburihim yusallun. This has been, again, a Sahih Hadith. Even the opponents of Mawlid say this is Sahih Hadith. They are alive in the grave, praying.
Darus Salam, Masjid.
And so, they are alive in the grave. And what happens when we send our salam to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He said to us, it is recorded in Sunan Abu Dawood, my soul is returned to me so that I can return the salam. What is salam? Assalamu alaikum. May the peace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be with you. What is this? It is dua. It is dua. So for our salah to be acceptable, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam must make dua for us. For it to be acceptable, he must make dua for us. We must have this relationship with him. And I don't want to go, they asked me to speak more about Salam, but I don't think we have time. Okay, I think people are getting a bit restless now. So I just want to leave you with this thought. This last incident. The Prophet ﷺ comes to Sayyidina Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Again, this is mentioned in Sahih Bukhari. It says, Ya Abu Musa, you have such a beautiful voice. You have such a beautiful voice. It is like one of the flutes of Sayyidina Dawood al-Islam. It's so beautiful. Last night I came by your house and I heard you reciting the Qur'an. It was so beautiful, mashallah. What is the response of Sayyidina Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiyallahu anhu? He says, Ya Rasulullah, if I had known you had been listening, I would have made it even more beautiful. And this is the crux of the matter. This is the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is this, is that you cannot go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He is the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we can't get in between that relationship. We can't go in between. You can't go between a lover and their beloved. You can't. So the only way to get a part of that relationship, to get a piece of it, is if you love the beloved. If you love the beloved and you try and please the beloved. Because even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to please the beloved. وَلَسَوْفُ يُؤْتِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. Soon your Lord will give you and you will be pleased, you will be happy, you will be satisfied. Who? Who is this addressed to? It's not addressed to us. It's addressed to Rasulullah Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. So our entire deen revolves around this reality that He is the beloved of Allah, and we can only get into that love of Allah if we follow Him, we love Him, we honor Him, everything. And I hope that if there are people who are opponents of the Mawlid, who are watching this, whether they are here now or they get to watch this video, if this video ever goes out, I don't know, that they contemplate, they think, are they really hearing these words of love from their own gatherings? Do they really have this feeling in their own gatherings? Do they hear these stories? Do they learn these manners in their own gatherings? And if they don't, then they need to ask themselves serious questions. Because as we said, and the very last thing, somebody asked me to clarify, is going to the Mawlid fard? Is going to Mawlid fard? Is attending Eid al-Nabi fard? In and of itself, it is not fard. No one has to come for the Eid al-Nabi, and if they don't come for Eid al-Nabi, there's no blame upon them. But, big but here. If something is compulsory in Islam, what leads to that thing which is compulsory also becomes compulsory. Wudu is not compulsory, it's not fard. But if you need to read salah and you don't have wudu, then wudu becomes fard. Similarly, if our love of Rasulullah is deficient, if our manners towards him are deficient, if we don't know his rights, if we don't know his life, if we don't know who his wives and his children are, and if we don't know these things, then coming for the Mawlid gatherings is fard. And then when you have a love like Sayyidina Umar, or Sayyidina Ali, or Sayyidina Abu Bakr, or Sayyidina Uthman, then you can leave the Milad gatherings and no one's going to bother you. In fact, we'll come to you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open our hearts and show us the deficiency of our love, and fill us with that love, and fill us with yearning for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yearning for him, yearning for everything connected with him, and make us beggars at his gate, so that we can come and be loved by you, O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us and guide us. Ameen. Wal akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Well, I don't want to be second guessing any of the ulama, guessing what their reasons are or whatever. for myself personally, I think it is important that we don't have a long distance relationship with these relics, that we go and visit these relics. But at the same time, we do have books which are showing the relics. For example, in Turkey, there is a book. I have that book at home as well. So I don't think there's anything objectionable to it as long as it's done in a very respectful way and is done with the utmost dignity and honor. I don't know how Ummah Channel did it, so I can't comment on that. And perhaps Mulana Shahid Reza, may Allah preserve him, he was respecting maybe the owners of it and their wishes, and maybe he didn't want it to become disrespected, because often today when we have people with their mobile phones, it becomes a disrespectful sight. Everyone's just going around with mobile phones. And what happens also, even the non-Muslims talk about this. You know, the non-Muslims, they take all their cameras to these pop concerts and things. And we're not comparing to this, but they have noticed that when you stand there taking the pictures all the time, you're no longer in the moment. You're no longer appreciating the reality of where you are and what you're doing and what you're in the presence of. And if that's in front of a pop star, then imagine being in the presence of the hair of the Prophet Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. If it's going to take you away from that reverence and appreciating that moment, then we need to put it away and put it in our pocket and leave it. And again, I don't want to second guess Ummah Channel or what they did. I didn't see it, so I can't say. Yeah, so the ulama took 2 points of view. One of them said we're going to categorize it as bid'ah sayyah and bid'ah hasana. Yeah? Others said no, we just keep bid'ah for those things which are bad things. And if we want to talk about a new practice which is good, we call it a sunnah. Based on the hadith of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wa Sallam, which I already mentioned, Sahih Muslim, also in another hadith where the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wa Sallam warned against bid'ah, but then he said, stick to my sunnah and the sunnah of Khulafa Rashida. But the point of this is, sunnah of Khulafa Rashida, what are they teaching us how to do? To facilitate for the people, to make their deen easy for them as far as possible without going into the haram. So you can categorize it either way. You can say it's bid'ah hasana, or you can say it is a new sunnah, a new way of doing things. Yeah. So this is not the exact words of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is maybe a paraphrase that your mom has given you. But yes, the mother is the parents after Allah and His Anbiya alayhi salam. Yeah? Then yes, your mother and your father, they are the most important people, and your mother is not more important than your father, but she deserves 3 times as much time of your time. Why? Because she is more compassionate, she is more tender-hearted, all of these things. But they come after Anbiya alayhi salam, definitely. So I don't think that when you were told this as well, that the intention was, because we are used to, whenever we mention Allah, we always think of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We never take them apart. Yeah? Whenever we mention one, we always think of the other. So this is probably what you were told, this is what it meant. Allah bless you. He has not specifically said bid'ahs that we cannot practice. He is telling us what is the conditions for bid'ah. So one is that the word bid'ah comes from, in fact, one of Allah's name is al-Badi, the originator, bringing something completely new. This is what it means, to bring something completely new. And as I said, first and foremostly, this relates to the aqaid. But if there is a practice that becomes popular amongst Muslims, which goes against the Sharia, then this will also be termed as a bid'ah. So for example, if women start going to the qabr at the time of the janazah and the time of the burying, then this will be a bid'ah. If the Muslims start to regularly gather for a 6th namaz in the masjid,
when this was prohibited, then this will be bid'ah. But where you can't say the Prophet ﷺ, he just gave us a general guideline. He didn't say specifically this is going to be bid'ah, that is going to be bid'ah. He said this is the guideline. You weigh it in the scales of Shariat. But mainly bid'ah is relating to the aqaid. It's mainly relating to the aqaid, what people believe. And most, if you look throughout history, all of the sects of Islam is not they differ because of practices, it's because they differ because of their beliefs. If you look any of them, it's because of their beliefs, not because of practices. We say in our prayers, Assalamu Alayka Ayyuhan Nabi. This is a shortening of saying Assalamu Alayka Ya Ayyuhan Nabi. You can say, this is part of the Arabic language, the harf nida. You can say Assalamu Alayka Ayyuhan Nabi, or you can say Assalamu Alaykum Ya Ayyuhan Nabi. This is the full, but you can shorten and leave out the Ya. But it has the same meaning. Peace be upon you, and it's in the definite article. So it doesn't mean peace be upon you, O Prophet, peace be upon you, O best of prophets. Because it's definite article. And this is definitely what we're supposed to be saying. Some people say, no, you should not say Assalamu Alayka Ayyuhan Nabi. But Sayyidina Umar, during his caliphate, he taught this from the mimbar to everyone in Masjid Nabawi. This is how you should read this. And this is mentioned in the Muwatta of Imam Malik. People got confused in the 20th century, 1400 years later in the 20th century, they misread something in Bukhari Sharif. Yeah, they misread something in Bukhari Sharif and said, no, you should stop saying Assalamu Alayka Ayyuhan Nabi. Despite the fact that for 1400 years, all four madhahib, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali, they said, say Assalamu Alayka Ayyuhan Nabi. Peace be upon you, O Prophet. They all said it. And for 1400 years, all Muslims are saying this in their prayers 5 times a day. Somebody comes in the 20th century, they said, no, you shouldn't say this anymore. You say, As-salam ala-nabi. Because they misread something in the hadith and they hadn't been taught hadith as well. So we ignore those people. But this itself is proof. You can say, Ya Nabi, Ya Rasulullah. Yeah? And there are other proofs as well. Sahaba Ikram, when they went to fight the false prophet, Lanati Musaylama, their battle cry was Ya Muhammada, Ya Muhammada. Raising, and again this is not disrespect, because we mentioned about how we speak about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is not disrespect, this is to raise his name high above those people who are following a false prophet. Okay? So yes, you are perfectly entitled to say this. Do you know what? I'm not familiar with this narration, though I do know that one of the times is when the Prophet Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam was born. But I tell you something else about Shaytan. Shaytan, when the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was receiving his first revelation, he sends out the other shayateen. You know what happens when the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam receives his first revelation? It's similar to the Mawlid. You have so many comets coming and hitting the Shaytan out of the skies. The idols are falling down. So Shaytan gets worried. He goes, that man must have come. That's what I'm worried about. So he sends out all of the shayateen. Again, this is from Ibn Kathir. So from their own sources. He sends out the shayateen, go find him. They'll come back and say, we can't find him. He said, I'm going to go and find him. Personally, I'm going to go and sort him out. So he comes down, he sees the Prophet ﷺ in Mount Hira, and he's doing his ibadah. And he says, I'm going to break his neck. This is the arrogance of Shaytan. I'm going to break his neck. So Jibreel alayhi salam comes down. He says, no, you're not. And he kicks Shaytan out of Makkah. Clear out of Makkah. Yeah, you watching wrestling and all this nonsense. This is the real thing. Jibreel alayhi salam kicks him clear out of Makkah. And then he catches up with him again and throws him clear out of Arabia. Don't mess with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has some true bodyguards, true people who will protect him. So I'm sure he was crying at that time as well. Ulama had many different opinions about when is the Eid al-Nabi. Is it on the 12th? Is it on the 9th? They gave many different dates. But why did they give different dates? Because they had done so much research to find out when this date will be. And why did they do so much research? Because they saw it as being something important and significant. They say that the 12th of Rabi al-Awwal is the day the Prophet Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam died. There's also a difference of opinion about this. But, as a general principle in Islam, we don't mourn for anybody for more than 3 days. Unless it is a wife, she mourns for her husband for 4 months and 10 days. This is the only exception to that rule. And those people are saying that you people are like the Shia people. But they want us to mourn for 1400 years. And this is why I said at the beginning, or towards the beginning, it is haram to use the word commemorate for the Milad. Why? Because in the English language, commemorate means it is a solemn occasion. It is a sad occasion to remember someone who is dead. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the Quran, لا تَصْطَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتُلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٍ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ إِنَّ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. Don't even think of those people who have died, who've been killed in the way of Allah, as being dead. And in another ayah, you are told not to say it as well. Indeed, they are with their Rabb and they're receiving rizq. And even if someone wants to dispute with us, this is only for the martyrs, it's not for the Anbiya alayhi salam as well. Prophet Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam was also a shaheed as well, because he died from the poisoning that he was given at Khaybar. This is mentioned in Bukhari Sharif. He said, now I feel that poison cutting my aorta. Yeah, that poison that I took at Khaybar. So he is a shaheed. So you're not even allowed to say that he is dead. You're not allowed to even think that he is dead. Yeah? So why are we going to be remembering his death and being sad about his death? He said to us, what? My life is good for you and my death is good for you. So we are celebrating that he is still involved with us. He is still involved in our lives. That we have that blessing of his involvement in our lives. We're not commemorating. It's not something distant in the past and everything's just gone wrong since then and we're so far gone and aren't we bad Muslims? And no, alhamdulillah, we have the blessing of continuing this relationship with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, the origins of the Eid Milad Nabi function as we know it. Some historians, non-Muslim historians, they came up with this research that the first people to do the gathering as we know it were the Fatimid Ismailis in Cairo. But they have done more research, and they're doing more research all the time about this. But this is coming from non-Muslim sources. But they're finding at the same time as the Fatimid Ismailis were doing this Mawlid, there were also Sunnis doing Mawlid in Syria. There were also Sunnis doing Mawlid in Iraq around the same time. The assumption from these people who are opponents of the Mawlid, because it suits them, is that it came from the Shia and it went to the Sunnis. And it didn't go the other way around. But let's for argument's sake, it started with the Shia. Let's for argument's sake, if something is good, it doesn't matter who it comes from. If it is in accordance with Shariat, and if it is for a good purpose, it doesn't matter who it comes from. This kind of sectarian thinking, we need to get rid of. Yes, if somebody is following a misguided sect, that is wrong. But that doesn't mean that every single thing that person says or does is wrong. If they say something good, then it's good. If they do something good, then it's good. But it doesn't mean we have to agree with their aqidah. Imam al-Ghazali, he said, if a Christian says, La ilaha illallah, Isa Rasulullah, this is a true statement. This is a true statement. There's no point telling him it's a wrong statement just because he's a Christian. Yeah? Doesn't make him a mu'min until he says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So similarly, if anybody from any sect says something good or something right, or they do something good or something right, that doesn't make it wrong. Just because they started it or they did it. This is a silly way of thinking about things. Debate whether either of those two personalities are AhleSunnah, for a start off. Having seen many of their speeches, I would say they're not from AhleSunnah. AhleSunnah is more than just saying we believe in Khulafa Rashida, yeah, and we believe in Sahaba Ikram. It's more than that. We shouldn't be shallow in our thinking. It's far more than that. Yeah, we wouldn't have ulama written so many books of aqaid clarifying what is the aqeedah of AhleSunnah wal Jama'ah. This is my first point. The second point is, I would hope that I've given you more than enough evidence about celebrating Eid al-Nabi, why we do it, and this kind of very narrow thinking, as I said, they're not consistent in it themselves. Where's the evidence for their Salafi Dawah program? Where's the evidence for their Global Peace and Unity Conference? Where is the evidence for 1,000 things that they do, which the Sahaba Ikram didn't do them? Prophet ﷺ didn't tell them to do it. Where's the evidence for these things? So if we're going to be consistent, let's get rid of all of those things as well. Let's say these things are all bid'ah and get rid of everything. And we won't do anything. We won't have any gathering. Yeah? Shall we do that? No. Shall we not have the seminar for Mufti Mensch and they have seminars and they have charity dinners? When did Sahaba Ikram do this? We didn't do these things. Well, I don't know whether I'm a Sahih scholar. I don't even know whether I'm a scholar, to be honest with you. I don't even know whether I'm even worthy of being called a student of knowledge. I'm just a preacher. Yeah, I've done a few classes here and there, but I can't say, call me Maulana or call me Mufti or something like this. Yeah? My knowledge is very small. But there are people amongst us. You have Mufti Sahib here, you have ulama here, who have really studied for years and years. I know what it's like to go through that. And I didn't go through it properly. The incredible amount of knowledge these people have. You will not find it on Shaykh Google. You will not find it on YouTube. The amount of depth. Maybe you heard things today you never heard before. But my knowledge is very small in comparison. It's very little compared to what these people have studied. And I'm always amazed at the new things that I hear from people who are senior to me. People who are muftis, people who are ulama. They have real in-depth knowledge of the usul, of the tafsir, of these things, which these people on YouTube, they don't have knowledge of them. They don't have, by and large, they don't have knowledge of them, and you won't learn them. So, let's be real and benefit from those people who are blessed to live amongst us. We have so many ulama in this country who live amongst us. But we don't, again it's part of adab. We don't have the adab. We don't have the patience to sit with them and show them the proper respect. So instead we sit behind our computer and we put on a video and we listen to it while we're ironing, or we're watching TV, or we're eating our chips. You can't do that in front of Mufti Sahib. You can't do that in front of an alim. And because you don't have the adab when you're listening to these speeches, then we don't benefit. We don't benefit when we listen to these speeches and we are half attentive, and we're not listening, and we're busy with something else. So this is why it's important to sit with people, mashallah, like in this gathering, we come, we listen, and we benefit. There's nothing like the personal touch. Yes, we have Hukuk Allah and Hukuk Ibad. The rights of Allah and the rights of the worshippers. So you've asked a very important question. And my answer, from my own limited knowledge, and I don't want to be challenging anyone or second guessing anyone, is that first and foremostly, we are not causing division. We didn't go away from AhleSunnaTV wal Jama'at. Other people went away, and we are now having to respond to them. We are now having to respond to them. And I have tried in my speech, I'm not always successful in this, in trying to be moderate in the way I respond to these things. We can't not respond. And we should also try and hate the sin, but not the sinner himself. And hate their deviant understanding, or their misunderstanding, or their ignorance, rather than the person themselves. And try and find a way to be compassionate with them. I know that many ulama say, look, just keep away from them, just don't have any relationships with them. But I think that there is a context to that. There is a context to that, which is when people have real knowledge and people really know what they're doing and what they're believing. I believe that in our reality, most of the people, we are lacking knowledge. And people are running after the first person who will give them knowledge. And people who are with the other sects, some of them may be very sincere. And if they are treated with a little bit of patience and compassion, and they are given the correct evidences, they will come back to us. But if somebody is not sincere and they're stubborn, then we have to be a little bit harsh with them. Because if they are continually causing fitna, and they're continually causing fitna and fasad, they're causing trouble in the community, yes, then you must be stern with them. And I believe this is what the ulama meant when they said, keep away from them, don't involve yourself with them, etc., etc. But
you would be street mufti.
No, not street muftis, I mean real ulama. They said these things because we have to be careful to protect our iman as well. If you have strong iman, and you know how to deal with these people, then you know how to give them the evidences, then you do it. And if you don't, then pass them on to somebody who can. Don't get into fights with them. Yeah? Give them their rights as their due, but don't get into fights with them and pass them on to somebody who can explain to them. But we need to protect our iman, because if we spend all our time with them, we're socializing with them all the time, then whoever you socialize with, whoever you spend time with, talking to, then you start to think like them. You start to talk like them. You start to get the habits. This is why the Prophet ﷺ said, you must make sure you have good company and avoid bad company. And our iman is the most important thing to us. Bad habits, not praying or whatever, is one thing. But changing our aqeedah is another thing altogether. So we have to be a bit careful with this. Yeah? But I think what you're saying is that we shouldn't necessarily be very, very harsh towards people. And I agree, if they're people open to learning, if they're sincere people that are open, that's fine. And if they're just people who want to cause fitna and fasad, then no, we need to keep away from them. The chair thing comes under the category of, every Mawlid gathering, you got men and women dancing together, and you got a birthday cake there, and you're doing party poppers, and you've got candles, and you're singing happy birthday. That's in the same category. It's the category of people who don't come for Milad, thinking they know better about what goes on in Milad than the people who come for Milad. It's just silly. There's no point even addressing that thing. It doesn't happen. It never happens. No one's ever recorded it. It doesn't happen. Okay? Unless they invented it. They put a chair there and they took a recording. Okay? That's just silly. As to the Prophet Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam, he is aware of us. He is aware of us. He gets to see us. He gets to see our deeds. And what we hope in these gatherings is that he Salallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam turns his attention and he turns his benevolent gaze upon us and blesses us with his gaze. And if we are very lucky, if we are very blessed, then he can come to the gatherings. He can come if he chooses to. Sallallahu Alayhi Wa Sallam. This is a possibility. Because we know, again, we have hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam on Miraj, he sees Musa al-Islam praying in his grave. Then he sees Musa al-Islam praying in Masjid al-Aqsa. Then he sees Musa al-Islam again in the heavens. So they're not Anbiya al-Islam not confined to the graves. And not just on Miraj, because people say this is just for Miraj. No. Prophet ﷺ, when he's going for Hajj, he said, it is as though I am seeing Yunus al-Islam, and as though I am seeing Musa al-Islam, and they're saying, Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik. And ulama said, he is seeing their spiritual reality going for Hajj. They all wanted to come on the Hajj of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They wanted to join his Hajj. So they joined with him.
MashaAllah, Shaykh.
It is perfectly possible. Whether us poor people, we will ever be blessed with his presence, Allahu wa Rasuluhu a'lam. This is you can understand this on many, many levels. The easiest level is that he is more beloved to us than our own selves. Our own desires, our own wants, our own loves, our love for our children, our love for our parents, our love for our community, our love for the things that we want in our lives. We place him first. This is the easiest way to understand it. But I'll give you a little bit more depth. We don't just have a nafs. Our nafs is like this self that we put out to the world, our personality. It's like a game. We put out this image of ourselves. We have a different image for different people as well. It's not really who we are. It's not really who we are. This is just something that we invented when we came to this world. Who we really are is our ruh. Who we really are is our ruh. And this ayat is telling us al-Nabi is closer to us as our ruh than our nafs is. This nafs is not real. It's fake. We make it up. We're not real. Get in touch with your ruh and you'll get in touch with the reality of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wa Sallam. But we can't really say much more about this in this type of gathering.